All right, my beautiful people, this is ERGJ, your conspiracy brother here with an episode here. We'll be going through just propaganda. We're going to be talking about the agenda of the establishment or the elite or the Illuminati. Give me just a second here while I set up so I can make sure I can see chat because I know people want to be able to chime in here. So give me just a second here so I can pull this up. So I want to be able to pop this out. All right, see if anybody's here. All right, cool. So I really just wanted to somebody's here. Hey, how you doing? Whoever that's here. So I wanted to kind of just talk and kind of share some thoughts with you guys. Again, my thoughts are not, 100% true, but I believe that everybody should be in a position where they're critically thinking and looking at things, looking at scenarios, looking at stories, looking at how the world is playing itself out in order to come to your own conclusions. And then we should be able to come together and have these discussions so that everyone, I believe that there's power in collective thought. I think that too many people are operating in silos thinking that their one answer is the answer versus coming together and saying, hey, here's what I see, here's what I see. And then we can actually bring those thoughts together so we can actually find a solution together versus, my thought is the only thought. And that's just the way it's going to be. So today we're going to be talking about the agenda of the establishment, the agenda of the elite, the agenda of the Illuminati. And the reason why is because I actually got a question today. Somebody just randomly emailed me or chatted me and asked me, what do I think about the Illuminati? And I was like, well, I think it's important that you define the Illuminati, because many people just say Illuminati and they don't really know what they're talking about or who they're talking about or who they are connecting the Illuminati to. So I don't really like to use that term because it's very generic. And then everyone, if you don't define something, then it stays generic in general. And then you can't kind of pinpoint who it is that you're talking about. So that's why I started using the term elite or the establishment, because if you know anything about our world, first let's talk about secret societies, because some people don't believe in secret societies, which I think it's foolish for you not to believe in secret societies, because a lot of societies that you see are in plain sight are secret societies. For example, the police, that is a secret society. Do you know what goes on inside of the locker room or inside of the police force? Don't they have a brotherhood where they keep things hush hush? Don't they do they tell on their big brother? No, they don't. That's a secret society. It's a brotherhood. So when I say secret society, what we're talking about is brotherhood, fraternity, sorority, club, association, whatever you want to call it. The NBA is an association. It's a secret society that's in plain view. Do you know what goes on in the locker room? No, you don't. There's a lot of secrets that take place, that happen, that the public are not aware of. We only see them playing basketball. Fraternities are secret societies. Do you know what goes on in those fraternities when they're not out in the community? No, you don't. They're secret. They keep things between themselves. Sororities are secret societies. Do you know what goes on in those sororities when they're not out in the community doing their community service? No, you don't. The things that go on behind closed doors are secret societies. So the only difference, I think, is that we're talking about a society that hasn't been out in plain view enough for people to know that they exist. And so because of that, we tend to believe, oh, they don't exist, or they're or it's conspiracy to even think that they would exist. And so I was watching George Carlin the other day, and he said that, they call it conspiracy for people to think that the people who own and control this world, who have the most money, who are rich and powerful, to think that they don't get together and discuss a plan on how they want to maneuver the world is almost ludicrous. We understand that they have conversations at country clubs that no one is privy to, right? But if we say that they're having conversations at a Bilderberg group, it's considered a conspiracy, even though it may be true, because no one can really prove it, because no one has access to this Bilderberg group. Because we don't have access, we think it's not true. The Disney Club 33, that's an elite club that most people don't know about and most people don't have access to. Because you don't have access to it, you might think it doesn't exist, or you may not think it's a conspiracy because you know there is a club, but you understand that very limited people have access to that club. So there's a lot of things that goes on there. Turkish baths, these what do you call them? These baths, you know, the Bohemian Grove, Turkish baths, places that you have to have a membership access to, because most people don't have access to it. They believe it doesn't exist, which is ludicrous. So we're just simply saying that a secret society is only secret because they're not in the open or the public. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that it's not very easy to get very much information on them. Why? Because the information that you have available to you, they own and control. So let me ask you this. If you owned a newspaper and there was some disparaging comments or thoughts or facts or things about you that would be damaging to your appearance, to your brand, to your business, would you print it in your own newspaper? I mean, if a lady came out and said, you know what, you tarnish my name, and I want to put a case against you as like sexual assault or something like that, would you print it in your own newspaper? Probably not. So this is why I always debunk people who say you don't have proof, because the only reason why you may not have proof is because they control the narrative. They control the story. They control the proof. Matter of fact, they can change the proof anytime that they want, because you may look at something one day, read it, and then in an hour they update it, change all the words, and you're like, well, I know I just read this, but they've changed the story along the way, which is why I'm so glad that I do so many videos, because I can capture the story before they change it. And then when they change it, I can point it out and say, this was changed. This was not the same story that they gave us 30 minutes ago. They've changed some words, they've taken some things out, and they're always trying to formulate the narrative. Now, I'm only speaking about media because that's the main thing that is in front of people. And so as a people, they believe what they see and what they read, not understanding who owns and controls what it is, the information that they get. And so because they don't understand that, they don't go out seeking other sources to validate the information that they receive. So again, if you are an owner of anything and you wanted to keep whatever it is that you do a secret, then of course you would not publicize it to the world. That just doesn't make sense. So for people to think that, oh, well, because I can't find any information on this secret society means that the society doesn't exist, is absolutely stupid. Matter of fact, you have a society called the Masons. I remember the Masons, and they wanted me to join, or they wanted me to come to a meeting. But guess what? I couldn't find any information on the Masons, so I was like, I don't know what you guys are about. How do I find information? And they were like, well, hey, you got to come to a meeting to find out. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I want to do my research about something before I come to a meeting or I join something. So I never looked any further into it. I thought that was very weird. But my experience told me that that's not the only situation where it'll be something like that, where people want you to join without you having any knowledge about it, because quite honestly, most of us are stupid. I mean, most of us will just do whatever feels good without even thinking about it. And so today, or doing this, I don't know why I'm setting it up this way. I'm just kind of going. And I don't know who's here. I see we got a couple of viewers. But I wanted to talk about the agenda of the elite, the agenda of the establishment, the agenda of the Illuminati, if that's what you want to call it. I don't really call it that because that's such a vague term. But we're talking about the people who own and control society. There are 13 families that scale back centuries in their bloodline. They continue to do what? They continue to transfer wealth down to the next generation. And also what they do is people who begin to build wealth, they steal that. And it's amazing that many of us can't believe that this happens but if we just look at history, we see that we are in a country that's filled with theft, thievery. How did they get the America? How did they get the United States of America? Of course, it stems from Great Britain. Great Britain sent people over here and they stole land from Indians. So if you think that they won't steal anything else, they have given us a blueprint for how they operate. Why do you think there was such a rift between America and Cuba? America wants control over Cuba and their resources. You got to start opening your mind and be like, what have we seen in history? And if we understand that history will repeat itself, because the people who are under control of those who own and control everything, they don't dictate history. Think about it. When you go to a war, who goes to war? Do the rich people go to war or do the poor people go to war? It's the poor people who go and fight the war for the rich people. Think about it. Everybody is not subject to the same laws. There are people that are above the law because they make the laws. We might feel like we voting on something, but they make the laws. The laws come into play and we are controlled by the laws. The laws aren't here to protect us. I'm sorry to make you understand that, folks. The laws are here to control us, to police. They're not here to protect us. No, they work for them. The police are here to control us. You understand? When you begin to look at this stuff, you'll start to see things a different way. You'll say, you know what? All this time I learned in school, the place where they indoctrinate you and fill you with all this information that has very little value to you until you start to think outside the box. You say, you know what? Here's what it was set up for. But then when you start to look at how it's actually being used, you see that people can manipulate the system. And who does the people that are able to manipulate the system? The people who have money, wealth, and power can manipulate the system however they feel. Why is it that Trump can make treasonous comments and not go to jail? Why? Because he can manipulate the system. He has money and power. Why is it that Hillary Clinton can have confidential emails that go out and she not be in trouble? Why? Because she can manipulate the system because she has money and power. If that were you or I, if that was a regular American citizen, they would be in jail, they would be locked away, and they would be forgotten about. So now let's start to think about, man, what is it that we're seeing in the world that has a global impact? Because the agenda or the establishment, the elite, they're not, I want you guys to understand this. They're not just concerned with the United States. They already have control over the United States. They control our food. They control our finances. They control us through religion. They control us through school. They control our minds through television and media. They already have control of the United States. So the agenda is much bigger than the place that you live. The agenda, you have to start thinking globally. You have to start thinking world, right? Because the world is what the owners want. They want total control, total domination of the world population. And I repeat that again. The ultimate agenda is world domination. Now, you see this in the movies, right? I want you guys to understand that there's lies in the news and there's truth in the movies. The one thing that they can't do is hide everything. So they put stuff out only for those who have discernment to be able to understand that, okay, you're showing me something here versus I'm just watching something for entertainment. They know they can slip everything by you through entertainment. Why? Because you'll laugh, you'll feel good, you won't analyze anything, and you think it's just for show. But then you'll see 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, something that you saw on TV or in the movies or in a song. You're like, man, that thing is playing out. For example, I listened to a group called Outkast. Outkast has a song called Bombs Over Baghdad. Well, isn't it interesting that now we're living in an age where you have plenty of bombs happening in Baghdad? What a coincidence, right? No, it's not a coincidence. Why? You think Outkast just made that song, don't you? That's what you believe, right? But then you understand who owns and controls the media industry, and then you'll see that, well, there's certain songs that just will never get released because they don't fit the narrative of what the people who own and control want to come out, want people to hear. So there's certain songs that they'll let through and certain songs that'll never get any mainstream attention. Why? because it's about distribution, and the people who distribute the music tell you what they will distribute for you. And if you don't make music that they want to distribute, guess what? You don't get paid. Again, the control through your finances. They tell you what they want to get out. Matter of fact, I would even go so far as to say they even help write some of these scripts or some of this music that you might hear, depending on who you are. We have some very talented people that can spin things and make it come out. But you got to understand that when you are in the system under control, you always have to look at who controls, who is operating, who is running this narrative. And then you can begin to say, okay, well, what is it that you're trying to convey? What is the message that you're trying to get across? So as we look at the world domination, we start to understand how the elite, how the establishment, how the Illuminati, again, I don't really like that term, but the Illuminati, those that have transferred wealth from generation, that stays in their bloodline, right? Who props up these presidents and these prime ministers and all this. This stuff is global. There's a reason why we have United Nations. This is where the global forces come together and they discuss their plans for the globe. Now, then you got to ask yourself, okay, well, who's not a part of the United Nations? Who has not joined yet to say that, you know what, you guys are not going to control us? And one of the first countries that stands out to me is North Korea. North Korea has decided that they're not going to play ball with the elite who want to own and control them. They have built up their military forces to say, you come mess with us, it's going to be Vietnam all over again. We are not falling for your tricks that you played the same trick over and over and over again to all of these different nations, giving them the belief that you're protecting them, when in reality, you're not protecting them. You're coming in to control their resources first, and then ultimately to control them, to put in your policies. So the agenda just from that idea is that they want one world government, a government for the world that's owned and controlled by them. Think about it in history. Everywhere the United States goes, they say democracy, a democracy is the best government. So therefore, if you're going to be an ally of ours and you're going to have access to our strong military backing, and we're going to connect, then you must be a democracy as well. If you're not a democracy, then we're going to label you as a terrorist country, or we're going to put sanctions on you so that there won't be any trade. That way we can control your resource, or we control your finances, who you can and who you cannot trade with. If you're not with us, then that means that you're also not with our allies. So you can't trade with our allies if we put sanctions on you, because that's going to cause a rift between our allies. So who are we allies with? So one part of the agenda is to create a one world government. It's the power of one. What else do we see? Whew. We see, we saw the coming down of the Twin Towers and the raising up of a one world trade center, right? We know that we know in the past that the dollar bill, the currency, and you look at foreign exchange, the currency of the dollar was at one point becoming mainstream across all countries. So the goal at that point in time was to have the dollar bill, or the US currency, be the one currency across the world. They haven't been successful at that, but they want one financial system. That is the agenda. One financial system, one global financial system. How can they get that? Well, they can only get that by owning and controlling the resources of every country, every city, and every nation around the globe. You get it? So they've been working diligently for years, for centuries. This goes back. We're not talking about just United States, because we got to understand where the United States generated from. The United States came from Britain. So we're really talking about Great Britain. If you think that, have you ever seen, other than fighting for our freedom, quote unquote. You know, when we broke away, supposedly broke away from Great Britain, which is really a big hoax. We really need to start breaking that down, because we still work with Great Britain. They still have heavy control over the way in which we operate in the United States. So don't think, when I say United States, I'm really talking about United States and our allies. We are all working together. So you got the system of wanting one government to reign over all of the land, wanting one financial system to reign over the land. Now, so what they did was, since the dollar was not operating how they wanted to operate, everybody wasn't buying into the dollar. Guess what they did? They started, and this was a while ago, they started planting central banks all over the place. And all these central banks will connect. All these central banks are independent of the countries for which they serve. But I guarantee you that they're not independent of one another. When you look at the central bank for the United States, central bank for the UK, the central bank for the Vatican, they got central banks all over the world, and they're not governed. So you can't, because they're independent, the laws of the land do not apply to the central banks. Why is that? You know, so there's no way to press charges. There's no way to look at a central bank and say the central bank is corrupt. No, because they're private institutions that are independent of the government. Does that make any sense to you? How did they get that way? Who? If you got to ask yourself, well, who signed off on that? It definitely wasn't the American people who said, you know what, this is a good idea. We're going to have an independent financial institution that's going to print money for us, but we cannot govern this institution that is creating the money for which we use on a regular basis. Who thought that was a good idea? I'm sure it wasn't the vast majority of the American people. And I'm sure in all these other countries where they have central banks, it wasn't it wasn't voted upon for them either. So I'm just trying to share some light on these different entities or these different aspects of the agenda of the elite. Now, why? Well, because if we begin to understand what they want, what they're trying to do, then I think as a people, the one thing that they're concerned about, the one thing that will falter their plans, is if the people actually come together. And so the way that they keep the people separated or divided, because we don't have a United States, we have a divided states. The way that they keep us separated or divided is through conflict. It's through what they call chaos. And while we are in chaos, they are bringing forth order. So what's the next level of order for them? The next level of order for them is two things. One, population control. The larger the population gets, the more dangerous it is that the population will overthrow the elite. Why? Because it's way more of us than it is of them, right? It's way more of us. So if all of us were to band together right now, we would be able to kick everybody out of office. We would be able to restructure our police force. We would be able to start over with laws that are fair for everyone, and that would be that would be judged upon everyone fairly if we really all came together. But why is it that we won't come together? Because they have control of our minds, most people's minds. What is that? How do they do that? They do what they call propaganda. It's the same, again, nothing new under the sun. Same thing that we saw with Hitler and how he was using propaganda to control the minds of 6 million people. The establishment, the elite, are using the same propaganda tactics that Hitler used to now own and control the minds of 16 billion people. So when I heard the other day, I heard about India. I think it was India, a far off country in India that was like, you know, that didn't have water. And because, well, they didn't have electricity, and they were trying to push India getting electricity. And everybody was like, yes, that's a good thing. And India was like, no, you know, we don't really, you know, we good. We've been living this way forever. And I was like, you know, while everybody thinks that the agenda of some institution putting forth their beliefs onto another organization or another land is good for them so they could be brought to the new age, I said, well, what happens when you get electricity? Well, when you get electricity, the next movement is to make sure that you have televisions. After you get television, what's the next movement? The next movement after that is to make sure that you have computers. Why? Because they can control what you see and what you're exposed to. You see what I'm saying? There's a reason why when you turn on the news, you'll never see anything positive. They don't want your mind to be thinking about positive things. They want your mind to be focused on fear day in and day out. What's the next bad thing that's going to happen? If you focus on fear, if you're filled with fear, then that leads to rage. When you're filled with fear, that leads to rage. That leads to acting without thinking. That leads to emotional sensationalism or emotions that are running wild. And when you're a people that doesn't think straight, there's no way that you can act straight. You see what I'm saying? When you're a people that doesn't think straight, there's no way that you can act straight. And because you can't act straight, we continue, no matter what group of people you're talking about, we continue to operate under the same playbook. So they already know if this story comes out, whether the story is true or not, if this story goes mainstream, here's how the people, no matter what group, are going to react. And the reason why I'm trying to expose this is to tell the people that we need to start acting differently. There's nothing wrong with watching television as long as you're going to watch it with a critical mind and say, what is it that the television is trying to tell me? Because it is trying to tell you a story. It is trying to get you to do something. It is trying to get you to feel a particular way. We just had the Democratic convention, the Republican National Convention. Most people don't know presidents are not elected, they're selected, but they get emotionally invested in this show that does nothing for them, but they want to have the next, they just want to be entertained. And that's what television does. It entertains you all day. But what does it entertain you with? It entertains you with chaos. It entertains you with murder, violence. It entertains you with things that are not good for you to actually have a sound mind, to be able to put together critical thoughts, opinions of your own, so that you can make educated decisions. And so if they keep us in conflict, they keep us in chaos while we are fighting, while we're rioting, while we're protesting, while we're bickering, while we're arguing, while we're doing anything but coming together, they are together in their plan. But the people that are going to go fight their wars and die for them, the people that are going to be living off welfare while they get rich, the people who are going to be in debt and we pay interest to make them wealthier and their families wealthier, we are the people who for some reason have not begun to understand that we are stronger than them if we just come together. And if we start to see what it is that they're doing in their agenda. So what's coming up, obviously, is the Olympics, right? And they already talked about Zika, a virus that's been around for ages, but for some reason, now it's popped back up or it's popped out with no cure, no vaccine. Do you really believe that? Where is it? It's in Brazil. Oh, what a coincidence. It's in Brazil that's going to have the Olympics. It's going to have people from all over the country coming to Brazil. What a coincidence. Now, 2 years ago, we had Ebola. Where's Ebola now? How does a deadly virus that's over in Africa, maybe it's still over there killing people in Africa, I don't know, how does it get contained to one area, kill all of these people, and only one American has died in the Ebola outbreak? Keep that word in mind, outbreak. So you had an Ebola outbreak, and then all of a sudden, no, maybe it's still happening, but you don't have any more media attention on it. It stopped after about, I don't know, after about a month. No more media attention, no more mainstream attention, as if it's not killing people anymore. Did it just vanish? Did it just disappear? Where is Ebola now? Did they find a cure? I don't know. But now we have 2 years later, we have the Zika virus. Don't you get it? It's nothing new under the sun. So it's the same thing. So now instead of it attacking Africa and being contained, now it's in South America. Now it's in Brazil. Now it's going to have the potential to infect, people from all over the globe. I still think it's going to be contained in South America. I still don't think any Americans are going to be impacted by it. Why? Because they don't need to control Americans. They already control Americans. Matter of fact, they control us to the point where they can literally lie to us in our face and we believe it to be true. We do no critical thinking. We do no investigative looking into things ourselves. We don't ask any questions. We just say, you know what, CNN, you wouldn't lie to me. Fox, no, you wouldn't lie to me. You might be a little racist. You might be a little biased, but your bias would not allow for you to lie to me. Makes no sense. So Americans are already controlled. They don't care about controlling us. They can care about controlling the other people who see how corrupt and how vicious, how sick that the elite of these Americas are. And it's not just America. It's all over the globe. Like Putin, look at The Economist. The Economist had a cover that told us who runs these countries. They're in it together. We think that they fight amongst each other. We think that they're really going to war. Listen, we've only had so many wars, and those wars have been to specific places, right? Normally the Middle East. There is something magical about the Middle East that the elite want control over. And there's also something magical about Africa that the elite want control over. Now, I haven't figured it all out for myself. That's why I look for other truth seekers to chime in, give their opinions, give their research, because there's something there. There's the reason why they created ISIS, so they could send them there, so then they could create this fake phony story, so they could get the American people behind them and their allies behind them when they say that we're going to war. We're going to feel like, yes, we should go to war because ISIS is crazy. No one's going to say, you know what, ISIS is not crazy. ISIS is controlled by you, CIA. So, why are we going to go to war with the enemy that we created? Now, where have we seen this? Because again, I always go back to history. We saw this with Al-Qaeda. We saw this with Osama bin Laden. But we have such short-term memory, we don't think about, man, have I seen this before? Has this happened in history before? It wasn't too long ago. We seen it with Desert Storm. We create the wars. We literally create the wars. Why? Again, okay, I'm going to leave this with you. Why do we create the wars? All right. So here's the deal, guys. Here's what you got to understand about war. What happens at the end of a war? At the end of a war, once the war is done, whoever wins has won. What happens is it's this thing called the spoils go to the victor. The spoils of war. So you create a war so that when you annihilate everybody in that war, you can take control of that land. You can take control of those resources. Or you can take control of the people and make them subject to your rule. You get it? There's a reason why these wars are created. It's all about control. It's all about world domination. So I come to you, Joe or Jane Doe, and I say, you know what? I want to do this in your country. And you say, no, this is my country. You're not going to come over here and do this in my country. And then I say, well, if you don't agree, if you don't sign this contract and give me your diamonds and give me your oil and give me your resources, I'm just going to bomb the shit out of you. Well, I'm not signing that contract, so I guess you're going to have to come and bomb me. That's the only way you get my land, because we're not giving it up just because you want it. Don't you get it? This is how they operate. So we talked about the agenda of the establishment being they didn't want world domination. We talked about them wanting one world government. We've talked about them wanting one financial institution. We talked about how they're operating not only in the States, but also globally, especially in the States, though, where they're creating conflict, bringing stories out day by day. You're going to see it ramp up here. day by day, bringing stories so that the people will have conflict, the people will be in chaos. And then eventually they can say, you know what, people of the United States of America, you guys are out of control. And because you're out of control, we got to bring order. And how do we bring order? Well, the first step is a state of emergency. This particular land, probably going to be Louisiana first, because there's a whole bunch of chaos going on in Louisiana. Louisiana might be the first state, you heard it here first, that goes into a state of emergency. What happens after the state of emergency? Well, that lasts for 6 months or 3 months, 6 months. And if it doesn't get any better, then they extend it. Now, what is happening during the state of emergency? Typically during the state of emergency, they start to put curfews on people. They start to have a little bit more military presence or cop presence that are roaming the streets to have control over people. It's almost like you go to a job and they tell you, you got to go straight home. You know what I mean? You can't go to the gym. You can't go to the grocery store. You got to go home and sit in your house. State of emergency. Now, that extends because they'll find something else to happen during the state of emergency that's going to say, hey, we brought this in. We was in a state of emergency, but more emergencies are happening. What happens after that? After that, you get martial law. Don't you get it? Don't you see? So they want us in chaos. They want us in conflict. They want us out of order so that they can bring order to our chaos. That is their slogan, order out of chaos. They have the plan to put us in chaos. And they also have the solution that we'll beg for because we're in chaos, because we're in conflict. We'll go along with their solution. They've already created the solution. They're just waiting on the reaction to come to the problem that they created. Don't you get it? Don't you understand? Haven't you seen this time and time again in your life? We don't control the narrative. We don't control the media. We don't control the financial system. We don't control the government. We don't control the school system. We don't control religion. They own and control it all. And those who own and control can tell the story however they want to tell it. So I wanted to present this to you guys today so that maybe it'll open your eyes up, because the more people who begin to understand who owns and controls things, who really runs the show, who really puts people in positions. Matter of fact, in the government system, we got people that's been sitting as judges and clergymen for 40-something years. How is it that they can keep their job forever? Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. But we don't vote on them people. We don't vote on Supreme Court judges. They can appoint them and elect them the same way that your president is appointed or selected. The only way that things are going to change, the only way that I see, in my opinion, that things can really change is for enough people to band together. If you start locally, that's fine. If you say, you know what, as a local community, we are in whatever, we're in Atlanta, Georgia, and everyone is sick and tired of the policies and the way that the Atlanta government is run, then we're going to come against the Atlanta government. There's no way you're going to band everybody together to come against the United States government. But if every city that feels oppressed in their city bands together, then they will be able to overcome or overthrow or revolt or have a revolution in that city. And that particular city, I believe, will be a catalyst or an example for other cities to do the same thing. Because we are talking about states. States from a state level, it can happen, and then that can trickle up to the federal level. It's got to start happening at the state level. That's why I tell people, don't even pay attention to anything nationwide. Pay attention to what's going on in your local community, your local state, and get enough people in your. If you can't get enough people in your city, if you can't even get enough people in your school to come together, then how are we going to see the whole nation coming together? It's got to start small and work its way big. So those are my thoughts. But as long as we know what the ultimate plan is, the ultimate forecast for what's coming down, for what we've seen in history, and we keep that in perspective, then that will allow us to formulate our plan and our playbook for how we're going to counteract that and actually come against it to make sure it doesn't happen. The number one thing that I tell everybody that we have to do is we have to stop fighting. I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your class level is, what your financial status level is. I'm not fighting with you. I'm not arguing with you. We can have some dialogue, and we can find some common ground we can build off on, but I'm not fighting. I'm not going out and protesting. There's no need for me to do that. That's more division. You know what I mean? Now, if we're coming together and I'm coming to your parade or your park and we're having some conversation about how we can mend these differences, that's one thing. But you can't, I tell people, you can't, like for example, wages, right? You got the minimum wage. You can't demand your way to riches. It doesn't work that way. You can't demand it. You can't demand change. Demanding change won't make change. Demands don't make change. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can demand all day, you can complain all day. That's hot air. Demands don't make things change. It's your actions. It's if you have enough people who have the same voice and are willing to go into these places and say, you know what, if you don't change, then this. If we don't change, then this. That has a bigger impact or effect. But you can't just demand it, because if you demand minimum wage to be raised, what they're going to say is, okay, guess what? We're going to raise minimum wage, but we're going to reduce the number of people that we hire. So you just have outdone yourself, which means that your fellow man now doesn't have a job because you've demanded wages be raised. They did that, but then they cut the jobs. As a matter of fact, they start creating robots to do most of the jobs. So now you've even cut even more labor. So yes, the people who have the jobs are getting paid more, but the overall population is impacted because there are less jobs. Don't you get it? So we got to start thinking. And because we are trying to demand our way to change, because we're not thinking critically, we don't have enough people who are thinking critically. We have too many people who are just being swayed by their emotions, swayed by what they see on television. I've just gotten to the point, guys, where I'm so far beyond ignorance. It doesn't bother me anymore. Ignorance is bliss. And they can be happy all they want, sleeping, playing games, surfing the internet, going to concerts, spending all their paycheck, being broke. They can spend their life doing that. That's not my life's work. I'm going to spend my life trying to galvanize people to make real change in this earth. That's it. That's what, and guess what? That's fun to me. It's fun to see, to see something come down and it's different today than it was yesterday. That's fun to me, to know that I was a part of something that was revolutionary. That's fun to me. It may not be fun to everybody, but that's fun to me. And it's okay. Go to the football game, go to the basketball game. Enjoy life if that's what you think enjoying life is all about. But for me, I'm more concerned about where the kids, the next generation, is going to be if enough people don't come together now and start to thwart the plans of the establishment. They've got us, like George Carlin said, they got us by the balls. It's like Django. I don't know if you saw Django Unchained. You know what I mean? Got them by the balls. The way that we get past this, guys, is for enough people to start thinking and coming together and say, you know what, I got an idea. I think I see something. I think I understand something a little bit better now than I understood it yesterday. Why? Because I didn't turn the TV on yesterday. I actually thought. I actually meditated. I actually put some energy and effort into making my mind stronger. I did a mind quiz or something. I had some intelligent conversation with some folks. I actually took the time to actually listen to understand instead of listening to reply. I looked for some common ground and I said, okay, well, we can work together. Black, white, Indian, Asian, it doesn't matter. We got common ground. We both poor. Because we poor, we want to build together so we won't be broke in the future. Find common ground and build from there. Stop looking for the differences. It's the differences that keep us divided, and it's divided that we fall, man. So hopefully this was helpful. I don't know. I just wanted to do this because somebody asked me, you know, do I believe in a secret society? I don't think it's a secret at all. I think they made themselves pretty plain. Now I can't pinpoint all of them. I know a couple of them, but more stuff is becoming. You can't listen. You can't hide truth forever. Truth will eventually come to light. The problem is, by the time it comes to light, people forgot what the problem was in the beginning. It may take 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years for truth to come out. How long did it take before they apologized about the Tuskegee experiment? How long do they keep stuff in vaults, evidence in vaults for 50 years on the JFK assassination? Think about it. Why do they hide this stuff for 50 years? Because the truth, it'll set people free. And they understand that because they own and control it, they can lock it away as long as they want. And by the time that information becomes available, the generation that was impacted by the information is long gone. They're changing history books. They're doing everything to make us forget what has happened in the past. And because we forget what's happened in the past, we're doomed to repeat history over and over again. All right, guys, this is ERGJ, your conspiracy brother. Hopefully this helped. I'm not quite sure. You know, it is what it is, man. And I know you guys got some thoughts, some things that you want to share as well. Oh, yeah, you got Zika Force and yeah, you know, that you guys want to share as well. Feel free to leave it in the comments. Stay in touch with me. I'm going to keep doing this stuff, man, and we get enough of this information out. I'm not 100% correct, but I know what my gut and my intuition tells me, and I'm willing to listen to it. I'm willing to give it some I'm willing to give it some voice, or some energy. I'm willing to give it a chance to speak truth in my life, and hopefully you'll do the same and speak truth in yours. All right, guys, I'm out. Have a good day.